Creating these classes requires equipment and services that cost money. If you appreciate this education, please think about going to elithecomputerguy.com and offering a one-time or monthly recurring donation. Welcome back. As you know, I am Eli the Computer Guy, and in today's class I'm going to show you how to insert records into your MySQL database table using an HTML form. So we're going to be using a number of different forms of technology today. We're going to be using an HTML form. That HTML form, you're going to input data into it, you're going to hit the submit button, and then that HTML form will then hand that data over to a PHP script. That PHP script will parse the data that it has been provided, turn the data into variables, and then use SQL in order to insert that into your MySQL database table. So this is one of those places where people ask me, Eli, what language do I need to learn to become a technology professional? And as you can see, even with something as simple as an input form that then puts information into a database, we're dealing with three different languages here. We're dealing with HTML, we're dealing with PHP, and we're dealing with MySQL. So using those different languages, I'm going to show you how to create a form today so that you can insert records into your MySQL database tables. So the warning for today is simply to remember that we are going to be using multiple different technology products in order to develop the demonstration that we will be coding to today. Why that is important is because in any of these different products, you may code something out improperly and then everything will fail. So HTML has a specific syntax. So there's a specific way that you write HTML code in order for it to do what it's supposed to do. There is a specific way that you write PHP code for it to do what it's supposed to do. There's a specific way that you write MySQL statements or SQL statements in order for the SQL statements to do what they're supposed to do. There's also things such as user privileges within your MySQL database, all kinds of different things going on. So do just realize when you are trying to do the demonstration project today, if you come to any errors, if you come to any problems, just go back and just recheck all of your code, go back, re-verify everything, go back and do basic troubleshooting, because what you might find is that you simply forgot a very, very small thing, and now all the code that you're written simply isn't doing what it's supposed to do. So just realize when you're doing the project today, we're dealing with HTML, we're dealing with PHP, we're dealing with SQL, we're also dealing with Apache, we're also dealing with Linux, we're also actually dealing with the MySQL database software. So all of these things have to work together simply for you to be able to do something as simple as create a form and be able to input data into your MySQL database tables using a PHP script. So with that, let's go over to the computer and I will show you how all this works. So here we are at my lab setup. As always, I have Ubuntu Desktop 18.04 LTS running. I have that running within a virtual machine in VirtualBox, and this is on my MacBook Pro. I have used Taskcell, Taskcell, in order to install the entire LAMP stack onto this Ubuntu desktop operating system. So I have Apache, MySQL, and PHP. I have not modified any of the default configurations other than to simply put a PHP folder in the root for the Apache public directory. Otherwise, I have not modified php.ini, vhost, or anything like that. I'm using, in order to code the little HTML and the PHP for today, I am simply using gedit. This is just a basic text editor because again, when we're doing these simple projects, I like using the simplest text editor possible so you don't have to learn an entirely new product simply to do something such as create an HTML form. So the first thing that we're going to do today is, as always, is we're going to go over to our MySQL database just to make sure we know what is going on with our MySQL database. So you go down to the apps, you put terminal into the search bar as always. That brings up the command prompt. And what we're going to do is simply first log into MySQL. MySQL space U, username, space -p, password, same thing we've done 1,000 times, password of 123456, because I'm super secure that way. At this point, again, we always have to verify we know what's going on with our database. When you are writing code, you have to write, the specific database, the specific table. If you misspell something, then it's simply not correct. The computer cannot guess what you mean. You have to it's either right or it's wrong. There's no close. You don't get a B in programming languages. You either get an A+ or an F. So the first thing we need to do is show Databases, just to make sure what databases we're dealing with. Then we go through here, we can see the standard databases, and then we have the class DB and a class DB backup. So the class DB is the database that we are using, or at least that I am using. So I'm going to do use class, uppercase DB, semicolon as always. That brings us into the class DB. From here, I'm going to do show tables, semicolon. We're going to go in here and see what the tables are. So we have a whole bunch of tables at this point because, again, I've been using this database server for all of the classes up until now. So we have insert demo, parts, all kinds of stuff. The table that we are going to be dealing with today is the students table. The students table, you will notice I have created a students table backup. So students underscore BAK is a backup of the students table in case I screw anything up. So I would highly advise, if you're going to be dealing with tables, especially with coding, that you create a backup so that if you have to delete the entire table, you have something to go back to rather quickly. But anyways, we have the students table here. So the first thing we're going to do is we're simply going to describe, DESC, the students table. To verify what this, need to be able to spell today, to verify what the students table looks like. So we click here, and okay, so we can see a student ID. We're not going to mess with this. This is an integer. It's a primary key, and this is what you auto increment. So basically, this is kind of like a user ID number. So you always verify you have one absolutely unique field for every record, so you don't come into any problems. Then we have the name field, all lowercase name. That is a text type. We have an age field. That is an int type. We have a gender field, and that is a text type. So today what we're going to be dealing with is we're going to be dealing with the name field, the age field, and the gender field. We won't deal with the uniform field. Then we need to go in, we need to select all from students just to see what the records look like, semicolon. And now we can see I have a lot of different records in here. So again, I've been playing around with a script just to make sure the script works. And so we can see the different names here, we can see the different ages here, we can see the different genders here. So basically now we know what the schema of the table looks like, again, what the column names and what the data types are, and we also verify that there are records in this table so that when we add records to this table, we know that we're actually doing something. So that all looks good to us. So now let's go over and take a look at the first thing that we need to do is create an HTML form, right? So the HTML form, when we're talking about an HTML form, this is just a basic, really crappy HTML form. So I've already saved this. So if I go to 127.0.0.1, that is the loopback address. The PHP folder /form.html. That's what I've saved this form as. And so what this code here does is it creates this very ugly form here. And again, this is where, so I don't have any CSS here. I don't even have any JavaScript here. So when we talk about how many languages are required in order to create even the most simple application, again, you really do. You truly need to know about 5 languages at least, just to really start doing much of anything, at least in the web app development world. But anyway, so we want to be able to create this form here. So we're going to have a field for the name, we're going to have a field for the age, and we're going to have a field for the gender. You'll notice name and age are simply text blocks, and then for gender, what I did is I plugged in boy or girl. This is a way of simply just doing like data validation. So if you're putting in something like gender, especially if you're going to be doing queries off of it, you don't want one person put in female, and one person put in girl, and one person to put in woman, and one person to put in boy, and one person to put in man, and one put in, that's one of the things you have to think about is you need to make sure if you're going to be doing queries off of the data that's being submitted, that it gets standardized as possible. So one of the things I've done here is I've simply put in an option box so you can either select boy or girl. So again, I don't have some people putting in female, some people putting in girl, some people putting in woman, whole 9 yards. So anyways, this is the form that we're going to be creating here. So we go down, we took a look, take a look at this HTML code, and it's really simple. So the first thing, again, you open up the HTML tag as you normally do, and then I'm simply opening up the body tag, not dealing with a head tag today because Again, we're just creating a stupid little form. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to create the form. So we're going to open up the form tag, and then you're going to do action equals. And so in here, this is going to be the name of the PHP script that you're going to be passing the data to. And then this PHP script will turn that data into variables and then do with it whatever it's going to do. Now, what you'll notice here is this says PHP all uppercase test. So what I'm actually doing here is I'm going to use the test script that I've created simply to verify that the HTML form is in fact passing the variable values over to PHP, and PHP is actually able to parse everything, and I'm going to have it just print out on the screen. So again, one of the things you have to be thinking about in the real world is creating troubleshooting routines. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how this form passes the values to PHP, and then all PHP is going to do is print it out to the screen. So we're going to verify that works, and then once we verify that works, then I will show you the actual script that will take those values and actually pass them to the MySQL database. So the action, this is just whatever the script name is, and again, do remember uppercase, lowercase, all of that has to be correct. So PHP TEST all lowercase is a different file than PHP lowercase TEST uppercase .php. Method post, so there's post and get. I'm showing you post today. People can argue about that. I'm just going to show you post. Then past that, what we're going to look at is, so now just basic text. I'm not dealing with tags. There's no H1 or P tags or anything. So I just do name, colon. I can just print that out on the screen, and that's what you get here if you don't use any tags at all. And then we're going to do input type equals, and so the input type is text. So that's basically saying it's just a text box, and then name equals what is the name of this particular variable. So when we pass this, how are we actually going to be able to, how are we going to reference this in the PHP script? So we're going to reference this by name. Now, to be clear, this doesn't have anything to do with SQL yet. This is simply passing from the HTML form to the PHP script. How are we referencing this data? We're simply going to call it name. Then we're going to have age, input type equals, this will still be text since we're only dealing with HTML here, name equals age, right? And then we're also putting breaks. So these breaks break onto the next line. Then we're going to do gender. Now for this, it's going to be an option box. So you open up with the select tag, you give the name. So we will be referencing this as gender. The first option value is absolutely nothing at all, so it'll pass nothing. Because again, this is one of those things you have to be careful about with defaults, right? So if I only put two options, so if I only put boy and girl, then it would default to either boy or girl. And then if somebody wasn't thinking about it and they put in the name and they put in the age, but they didn't verify the gender was correct, you might end up with 90% of your people being associated with boy or 90% associated with girl simply by whatever default you've left. So by creating a default value of nil, of nothing, then worst case scenario, you did not get the information when it was inputted into the form. You don't have to worry about getting a lot of bad information. So getting bad information into a database is one of the worst things that can happen for you. Then we have option value equals boy. So this is just simply a boy. So this right here is what will actually get input into the database. And then option value equals girl. This is what actually gets inputted into the database. So for here, you'll see it's all lowercase boy, all lowercase girl. So that goes in. And then since everything is either boy or girl, then I can do SQL statements or whatever based off of that. Then here for boy, this is what will be shown on the screen. So we come here. So boy, uppercase B-O-Y, girl, uppercase G-I-R-L. So this is what gets shown on the screen. Then you close the select, you close the option box. Then we do another break. Then you come down here to input type. Input type equals submit. So it will simply be a submit button. We are going to close the form. We are going to close the body, and then we're going to close the HTML. So this is our complete HTML form. You can have as many, I suppose as many. You can have a crap ton. You can have a crap ton of different fields. I just went with 3 here. This could be a whole form of 20 different fields if you wanted it to be. Now let's go over and take a look at the PHP TEST file. Let me just click save, make sure that's saved. So we're going to go here, and so I have this file called PHP, uppercase DEST. Going to open this up, and what you're going to see here is a very incredibly simple PHP script. Basically, what I'm using this PHP script for is just to verify that things are working properly. When I input data into the HTML form and then I pass it over to a PHP script, that it actually gets parsed how it's supposed to get parsed. So what we have here is we're going to open up the PHP script like we normally do. Then we're going to create a variable $name. So now it's going to be $name. And $name is going to equal the value from post that is name. Right? So we created that value in the HTML form. So when we go here, we take a look at the form. So again, name, age, gender. So when we go over here to the script that we're going to be dealing with right now, so it's going to $_ post, all uppercase, bracket, single quotation mark, and then whatever the name of the value is that you provide in the HTML form. So name, and so that's going to be the value of the variable $name. $age is going to be the value of whatever the age is that the person put in. $gender is going to be the value from that option box of whatever they put in for gender. Then all we're going to be doing down here is we're going to simply be echoing out. We're going to be printing out. And so we do $name, so whatever the value of $name is, period. Basically, we're concatenating here. We're going to put a break. Then we're going to concatenate again, period, whatever the value of $age is. Period to concatenate, we're going to do a break, period to concatenate, we're going to do the value of $gender, period to concatenate, and then we are going to do the break. Oops, and somehow there is an extra semicolon there. There doesn't need to be. We'll just click save to verify that all looks good. We are then going to go over, and we're actually going to go to the form. So we'll just do a refresh, make sure everything is fine with the form. So we here, let's say we put in Robert, an age of 12, gender of girl. Hey, Robert can be a girl, I suppose. And now we're going to submit the query. And so now we can see Robert, 12, girl. So we can verify the name was passed properly, the age was passed properly, the girl was passed properly, and PHP is parsing everything how it's supposed to parse. So at this point, we have not actually done anything with the MySQL database itself. We've simply passed the values from the form to this particular PHP script. Now let's go and actually deal with the PHP script that we want to deal with. So the PHP script that we want to deal with is PHP form. So I created a script called PHP, uppercase F for form.php. And this script right here is everything that is actually required to send the values from the HTML form over to our MySQL database. So here what we're going to do is we're going to open up the PHP script like we have before. And then just as we did in this previous script here, just like we did in this previous script here, we are then going to turn the values that have been provided by that HTML form into variables. So $name, identical, equals, $_post, and then whatever the value for name is. Age equals, whatever post, whatever the value for age is. Gender equals, $_post, whatever the value for gender is. You do need either the single or these to be within either single or double quotation marks in order for this to work. Then we're going to come down. So once we've created those variables, the values for those variables, because those will be passed in the SQL statement, then we're going to come down and we're going to deal with the connection information just like we have in the past, I don't know, 5 or 6 classes at this point. So $server name, username, password, database. Again, since it's the local server that we're dealing with local host, username. My username is Bob, so a root level account, at least while you're initially playing around with this. Again, MySQL database account, not a Linux account, the MySQL database. So username of Bob, password of 123456, and the database, $DB, is that class DB. So you have to plug all that in. Then you're going to come down here. Again, you're going to create a connection, new, MySQL I. You're going to pass the value for server name, pass the value for username, pass the value for password, and pass what database you're going to be trying to access. As always, we have the if statement. So if the connection fails, so we're going to pass the connection, the $CONN. If we get an error, if there is an error, kill the connection, say that the connection failed, concatenate, add on, and then basically say what the error is. Bad password, database doesn't exist, so on and so forth. Then we get down to the new thing for this particular class today, and our SQL statement for today is basically a normal SQL statement. We are just going to be adding in the values for the variables that we created up here. So we have a normal insert statement. So basically we're doing $SQL. So we're creating a variable for $SQL, and that is going to equal, you're going to open up with double quotation marks, and this is going to be the SQL statement. So insert, create a record into the students table, right? Same as before, so the column names. So first column name is the name column name in the MySQL table, then the age column name, then the gender column name, close parentheses, like you always do. Then you're going to say values. So what values are you putting into those columns? And so then in here, you're going to need the single quotation marks. So the single quotation marks around all the text. And so we're going to say the value for $name within single quotation marks, comma, and then single quotation marks, the value for $age, close single quotation marks, then a comma, then single quotation marks, the value for $gender. So basically whatever was passed from the HTML form, those values will be assigned to the variables here, and then we are simply pointing to the values for those variables in this particular SQL statement. So this SQL statement looks identical to how a normal SQL statement would look. The only difference is instead of saying Bob 12 boy, we're simply putting in the variable names, and then we're accessing the values. Then of course you're going to do semicolon, or you're going to close with a double quotation mark and then do a semicolon. And then down here, we're actually going to send the information. So if $connection query and $SQL. So we're going to pass this whole thing that we created here. So we're going to pass this whole SQL statement using this connection query. If it equals true, so 3 equal signs. So basically the value is true and the data type is true. Basically, all you have to remember is just do equal true, close parentheses, then we're going to open bracket. Then here, I'm simply going to echo out. So basically, if it's true, if it works properly, I'm just simply going to say added, and then we're going to concatenate on the value for name, put in a little comma space, concatenate on whatever the age is, then concatenate on, again, a comma and space, and then concatenate on whatever the value of gender is. So basically it's going to print out added colon, space name, comma, space age, comma, space gender, right? So everything was sent properly. Else, so if for some reason it failed out, SQL statement isn't right, who the hell knows what, you're going to echo, it's going to say error colon, and then it's going to give you the SQL statement, and then it's going to give you the connection error. You're then going to close the bracket, and then you're going to close the connection here. So you're going to take that connection, and then you're going to close it. And this is the whole script for the PHP form. So let's go over to the form.html. And so here, what we're going to do is we're going to update this to form. So now, instead of sending the data to the PHP test.php script, we're now going to send the data to the PHP form.php script. We're going to hit save. Then we're going to go back to Firefox. And then we're going to just go back to make life easier because we're going to the same form.html as we were before. Now at this point, one of the things that we need to do is we need to do a refresh. We need to do a refresh to make sure we're grabbing the new HTML form, right? Because we had the old HTML form. So if I don't do a refresh, it's possible that it will still keep trying to process based off of the old form that was already in there. So by doing the refresh, now we make sure that it will be passing to the new PHP script, not the old PHP script. So from here, I don't know, let's type in Susan with an age of 14, and let's say Susan is a girl. So then we're going to hit submit query. So added Susan 14 girl. We're then going to go to MySQL. So we can take a look. So this is the records that we had before. We had records 1 through 16. The last record we had inserted was Wanda. So I'm simply going to do select all from students again. Cross my fingers that I didn't screw anything up. And there we go. So now we have record 17. We have Susan, who is 14, and a girl. That's simple there. Again, I can go back and We can do Mark. We can make Mark 7. We can make Mark a boy. We can submit the query. Added Mark 7 boy. Go here, select all from students again, and we can see record 18 has been created. Mark 7 is a boy. We can also, again, let's go back. Let's say Tim. Let's make Tim 5 years old. And then again, like I say, for the gender, since I left this one option, basically the default as blank. So if somebody forgets to put what the gender is, I can just submit query. So we can see added Tim 5, but we see nothing for gender. Again, select all from students. So we can now see we have record number 19. That is Tim. Tim is 5 years old. And now there is no value for gender. And again, this is an important thing. Many times, especially in the database world, it's better to not have any data than it is to have wrong data. So again, doing things such as creating a default of nil or nothing, that can actually be much better than simply putting two options, and then if somebody fat fingers a whole bunch of things, then winding up with a whole bunch of people being boys or girls or something else that they're not supposed to be. But this is all there is for this particular code today. Again, so you're just going to simply create an HTML form. Just like any HTML form, you can go and do some research on it. You can create option boxes. You can do radio buttons. You can do all kinds of different input. Basically, the main thing that you're going to be dealing with is make sure to name it something useful. Again, name, age, gender, whatever else. Those values will then be passed to whatever script you have here for the action. So PHP form.php is what we currently had. Previously, we had PHP test.php. So basically, this is where these values are going to go when somebody hits the submit button. When you go down to the PHP form or whatever else, the big thing here is this is where you're going to create the PHP variables and then assign the values of those variables to whatever was passed from the HTML form. So $_post, bracket, and then single or double quotation marks, and then whatever the name is that you had in the HTML form. So name, age, gender. Essentially, once you've assigned those values to these variables, then you can do whatever you want with them within PHP. What we are going to be doing today is, again, we're going to be doing this insert SQL statement. So we'll do insert into students, name, age, gender. So these are the column names as normal, values as normal. The only difference here is that when you do the single quotation marks, inside those single quotation marks, you're going to be putting the variable name versus a specific piece of data, and then you'll be passing that information over. When you come down here, again, to the if, you're going to do the connection query. You're going to send the SQL statement that you created here. And then this, the echo, basically, if it's true, you decide what you want printed out here. So I decided to print added the name, the age, the gender. Again, for a troubleshooting routine, make sure everything's working properly, but you can print out whatever you want to print out here. Else, again, you can print out, if it errors out, whatever you want to print out here. And then you will close your SQL connection. And that's really all there is to being able to take data from an HTML form, pass it to a PHP script, have that PHP script parse the information, and then be able to insert that into a MySQL database. So now you know how to insert records into your MySQL database tables. Yay! Really, realistically, that's a huge portion of what most web applications are at the end of the day. Again, it's kind of funny. People have this idea that the web applications that they use are so new and fancy and cutting edge and all that kind of thing. But in reality, most web applications are inserting data into a database, doing reports off of data in the database, and then creating fancy charts and fancy user interfaces. But really, most of what web applications are is you put data into a database, you're able to do reports, and then you're able to modify the data in the database. And if you understand how to do those three simple tasks, you can actually do a lot of very interesting things. But the other thing to be thinking about, again, if you're new to technology, is just to realize is you're starting to see how many different technology components go together to do something as simple as an HTML input form, right? So again, we've got a Linux server, we've got MySQL, we've got the entire LAMP stack on the Linux server, including MySQL. We have to be able to create a MySQL database. We have to create the MySQL tables. Once we've done that, we have to be able to create an HTML form. Then we've got to create the PHP script in order to be able to send the information from the HTML form to the PHP script. And even once we've done that, what we have is still incredibly ugly. In the real world, if we're going to be developing this into some kind of production level application, you would need at a minimum, you would need CSS, cascading style sheets, that would make things pretty, put colors, fonts, all of that kind of stuff, basically be able to create a pretty user interface. And then most likely you would use something like JavaScript. JavaScript is a client-side programming language that allows you to do like rollover effects and allows you to do like drop-down menus and that type of thing. And so that's why I say that if you're going to be doing things like web development, realistically, you need to know at least 5 programming languages. Again, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, PHP, and SQL. And we're literally just getting started. So I want you to understand, if you're new to the technology field, this is why it's really funny when people say, what language or what product should I learn? It's not one. It's not one. At least 5. Five is when you're still a beginner. It's like knowing 5 different languages means you can create a half-assed product that can actually accomplish something. To really start doing cool stuff, then you start getting into frameworks and things that are even more sophisticated. But what I showed you today is just a very simple way to be able to input data, again, using a basic HTML form. I will warn you with this. Again, don't do this in a production environment. There's no data validation on here, so we're not validating that the data going into the database is correct. There's no security in what I showed you how to do today. So what we've done is very simple, but this gives you an idea of how to input data from an HTML form into your MySQL database, and it's a very, very useful first place to start. So as always, I enjoyed doing this class and look forward to seeing you at the next one. Apparently, the type of content you just saw is not what Susan W. wants for the future of YouTube. This means that recommendations by YouTube to this channel have dropped massively and views are becoming comically small. I hate to ask. I used to say I would never ask, but if you could subscribe, like, comment, and most importantly, share the videos that you appreciate, that may help slow the death of this channel. Do remember that if anything at all happens to this channel, you can go to EliTheComputerGuy.com to view the content and access information not available on YouTube.